looking at the participants which have logged in already, I don't know where Fifi is. I wanted to suggest that we start with our program. If Fifi confirms that all the media houses have been accepted into the program, I would suggest that we start. Can Fifi confirm that for us, please?
Okay.
Fifi?
I will play the national anthem as you can start.
Yes, okay. Yeah. Where is the national anthem, Comrade Shana? Thank you very much, Comrade Shanaz, for that item of our national anthem. Let me take this opportunity and welcome everyone on our platform attended this commemoration of Comrade Peter Mokaba, the Lion of the North. Let me also acknowledge and appreciate the presence of the Treasurer General of the ANC, who is going to be our keynote speaker for this important event that we are holding. And all the former leaders of the African National Congress Youth League. I see on the platform that we have intergenerational presence on this particular program, Comrade TG. We've got people who led with Comrade Peter Mokaba in our midst, those who led before us and those that we led with, and the current leadership of the ANC Youth League from different structures. They are here with us today to honor our former president of the Youth League, Comrade Peter Mokaba. On behalf of the national trust team of the ANC Youth League, let me welcome all of you, and the National Executive Committee of the ANC presence is acknowledged in our midst. I see they are here in numbers. Leaders of the Youth League from different regions and provinces. I acknowledge all of them as well. We are gathered here today in this platform because COVID-19 has not afforded us an opportunity to celebrate our leader. And as a ruling party, we have an obligation to ensure that we walk the talk. Regulations that are set by the ruling party are also adhered to by all the structures of the African National Congress. It is so unfortunate that we commemorate the Lion of the North in this manner. We're hoping that COVID will be better so that you are able to hold our programs of January 8th in a normal circumstance, but we are here today and we have taken a posture that begins to say we co-live or coexist with COVID-19. In that way, we will not be confused, and all of us should acknowledge the fact that we coexist with COVID-19. We are gathered here to celebrate a life well lived, a revolutionary, formidable force, fearless, selfless product of the masses of our people, a doyen in his own right, a Comrade Peter Mokaba, a comrade which never defined himself outside the Congress movement, even during difficult times. He stood his ground and fought battles within the structures of the ANC. And that is a trait that as young people and a younger generation should live for and ensure that at all times when we disagree within the structures of the Congress movement. And I want to welcome all of you in those words. And the national anthem already has been played by the hosts. Now I'm going to allow the Progressive Youth Alliance to do messages of support. We have SASCO in our midst and the Young Communist League, our sister organization. So I'm going to allow SASCO to do a message of support. Over to you, comrades of SASCO. Comrade Butanan, President of SASCO, Comrade Matiwan. If SASCO is not here, can we move to the Young Communist League? Comrades of the Young Communist League, are you here? Comrade Tembani, do we have SASCO and YCL in our midst?
I'm currently just speaking to the Unobala because it says ODP is supposed to be here of the SASCO.
Okay, so in the absence of SASCO and the YCL, we are left with no choice but to allow the Treasurer General of the ANC. But before inviting the TG, can Shanaz play a music item? Comrade Shanaz?
No.
Thank you so much, Comrade Shanaz, for that music item. The comrade of the YCL, I'm told he has managed to come in and he was allowed from the waiting room. Comrade of the YCL, can you please render a message of support before the TG takes the platform? National Chair. Comrades of the YCL, are you here? So in the absence of comrades of the YCL, can we allow the president of SASCO to deliver a message of support before the TG takes the platform? Comrade Matiwani.
Comrade, I was trying to speak, unfortunately.
Muted.
Yeah.
Okay, Comrade Mabuse, the platform is yours. And then when you are done, Comrade Matiwani, the president of SASCO, will take the platform. Over to you.
Thank you very much. The leadership of the ANC Youth League, the leadership of Progressive Youth Alliance, the leadership of the African National Congress, led by the TG, of course, our former chair of the party in Gauteng. Kindly receive our message of support from Young Communist League. We celebrate and commemorate the life well lived by the young lion of the North, Comrade Peter Mokaba, who is known during struggle for his role in the student movement and in African National Congress and the Youth League, who is known for his participation in psycho. We commemorate this day for his life that is well lived at a time that our country is faced with a number of challenges which are known by all of us. COVID, which is wreaking havoc. We celebrate his life at the time that our country needs young and energized youth who will fight like him. We commemorate this life well lived of Comrade Peter Mokaba, who is known to be fearless, unapologetic, through his slogan that is known that kill the colonialist, kill the oppressor, and he was unapologetic. And when he was saying kill the oppressor, kill the colonialist, because those who were oppressed, our people, our poor masses in the country, and our poor masses who are having nothing to show. We commemorate today when we look in the contemporary challenges, when in our democratic dispensation, when our entities are in a sorry state, that we think we must draw courage from Peter Mokaba and ensure that we stabilize our state entities, Section 9 institution, SAPC in particular, where the poor and the working class are about to face retrenchment, which we hope the leadership of the ANC will intervene. We commemorate this day reflecting, knowing for a fact that majority of students very soon they have to return if conditions are allowed. We'll see later at a later stage, but at the time that we live in difficult conditions. With these few words, we want to say to the ANC Youth League that we appreciate the time that we're given to join you and commemorate the life well lived by our stalwart, Comrade Peter Mokaba, who was unapologetic. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, National Chair. Without further ado, I'm going to allow SASCO to take the platform and share their message of support. Thank you very much, SASCO. Comrade Buyile, Deputy President of SASCO, who is supposed to deliver the message of support. I see you are here. SASCO is not here. So in the absence of SASCO, can you mute your mic if you are muted? Because I don't know what's happening, because I see you are on the platform. I see the Deputy President of SASCO on the platform. Otherwise, I will invite the Treasurer General of the ANC to take the platform if you, comrades, are unable to take the platform. Comrades and friends, let me take this opportunity and invite a leader which needs no introduction, Comrade Paul Mashatile, a seasoned cadre of our movement, one of the tested and one of our own, a generation which we think that it is ready to take over the ANC and lead it further, and probably, or perhaps in so doing, will be able to resolve some of the issues and some of the challenges which we have, because they are the fresh blood currently that should take over, and this is the generation that led with Peter Mokaba and a younger generation before, many of us that has led our movement with distinction. And Comrade Paul Mashatile, they call him spokes there in his province, but we call him our TG in the structures of the ANC, is a cadre that grew up in the ranks of the ANC with no broken track record. You can go and check for yourselves. We know him, a very firm leader that raises his views without fear of contradictions. When he confirmed his availability to address this particular lecture of Comrade Peter Mokaba, a fearless leader of his own time, we were happy as the NYTT that he will address because we believe that him and Peter Mokaba are from the same school of thought, and they fought battles when it was not fashionable. They joined the ANC when it was not fashionable to join the ANC. Their commitment to the organization, it is not one that is defined by the material conditions, but one that is defined by selflessness, commitment, and determination to better the lives of our people. In those few words, comrades and friends, we are going to allow the Treasurer General of the ANC to address us on this important gathering of a commemoration of the Lion of the North, Comrade Peter Mokaba. TG, take the platform. Can you please unmute your mic, TG? TG, can you unmute your mic? Please unmute your mic. Shanaz, can you assist the TG to unmute his mic? TG. TG, can you unmute your mic? Comrade Keith, the TG must unmute the mic. We don't hear anything that he says. Can he unmute his mic, please? Yes, yeah. TG, can you unmute your mic? But who's sabotaging us there? Guys, Paul is talking and we can't hear a damn thing. Comrade Shanaz, can you unmute the TG, please? Comrade Shanaz, can we have a music item meanwhile we are waiting for the sound engineers to resolve the challenge that we are having?
Can you hear me from here?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, TG.
Can you use this? Just okay, so yeah. Sorry for that. Sorry, I was doing it. Can you hear me now?
Yes, TG, you are audible.
Yes, I was actually doing through the camera, but something is not working. Yeah, I'm going to start from scratch.
Guys, can we do our camera? If the camera is not working, can we use gadgets that are at our disposal? Shanaz, can you unmute the TG, please, Shanaz?
It's not you guys.
Unmute the TG.
Tandy,
Yes.
I think we shall not mute the camera. If we shall not can
Shanaz,
unmute it.
mute the camera of the TG, please.
It's unmuted.
The camera is unmuted now.
Can you speak TG? Can you test?
Can you unmute the camera of the TG, please, Shanaz? I can hear you, TG, loud and clear. You are now audible.
That's the camera.
Shanaz, unmute the camera. Oh, you need over.
I don't know. Everything is unmuted.
Okay. Okay, let's see. The TG is gone again. Can the sound engineers surrounding the TG help us? Can you provide the TG with the earphones if it needs be? It can't be everyone around the TG is technologically challenged. There has to be somebody who is able to help us. Where is the IP? Can't hear the TG. Can the TG unmute the mic? Make sure that he is unmuted. Comrades, whilst we are allowing the TG to resolve with his team the sound or technologically challenges that he's encountering where he is, can we allow SASCO to do the message of support? And probably by that time, the TG will be better positioned to deliver the lecture. Comrades of SASCO, are you here? SASCO. Can you speak? Don't type there and say you are here. Shanaz, can you? Who is speaking from SASCO? Can you unmute SASCO? Or Comrade Shanaz, can you play the video of Peter Mokaba meanwhile?
Comrade TM, sorry. I think I've been unmuted now. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. I think let me first off begin by apologizing for the delay in our input, in our message of support for the program. It was not intentional and it was not in any means a sign of us not taking this program seriously. We as the South African Student Congress would like to extend our support for the program and to, at this very critical time, pass a message to the youth of South Africa and to emphasize the need for us to re-energize, reignite the flame of young people as Peter Mokaba had done in his generation, and to also emphasize that there needs to be a programmatic approach, not a populist one, to the issues that young people are facing in this country. We are faced with an issue of young people being unemployed, being disenfranchised, being futile, being jobless, and they need to be led, and a youth league, and the necessity for a youth league and a youth structure that can champion the issues that young people are confronted with has never been more exigent than today. And we as SASCO, in the spirit of Peter Mokaba, would like to say that the need and the urgency for a vibrant youth league, a militant youth league that will not be a youth league of slogans, but a youth league of programs, of understanding the institutional importance of the youth league, is far more exigent in today's time as we confront COVID-19, as we reimagine society, and as we have the responsibility as young people to shape a future that belongs to all of us. These are uncertain times, and in uncertain times, the necessity for leadership is much more. And I think we as young people, as SASCO, are saying that as much as we as SASCO will define the new student that is going to be an advent of the COVID-19 pandemic, there needs to be a youth league that must define the character of young people, vibrant character of young people, militant young people in this country, that must be led by a program, not by slogans, not by empty rhetoric, but by a necessity to define themselves and to define society. And we like to wish the TG, in fact, wish the program a success. And as South Africa, we are there to support in any way we can in reviving youth structures of this country, because the youth are the future. In fact, the youth are the present, and only nature can dictate that necessity. Thank you very much. Amandla.
Thank you very much, Comrade Deputy President of SASCO, for the message of support. I think the TG is now ready. Before allowing the TG to the platform, let me take this opportunity also and welcome the President of the ANC Women's League in our midst, Comrade Batabile Dlamini, who is also amongst the people who have attended on this platform. TG is now ready. We are going to receive the memorial lecture from the TG. Can you mute this fellow, Comrade Shanaz? We don't want to see Assisi Solani now. We want to see the Treasurer General of the African National Congress, because it's the one supposed to address us now. Assisi, can you mute your mic? Comrade Shanaz?
Well, Comrade Chair, I've unmuted myself now.
Yes, good, TG. Liberate yourself from Shanaz, otherwise we are going to have problems. Welcome, TG. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. Firstly, let me convey my greetings to the family of the late Comrade Peter Mokaba, wherever they are, if they've tuned in or listening to us. Let me convey my greetings to the leadership of the African National Congress and the entire alliance, the former leaders of the ANC Youth League, members of the Youth Task Team led by Comrade Tandi Mahambehlala as convener and Comrade Sibongile Besani as the coordinator. I also want to convey my greetings to the entire provincial, regional, and branch structures of the ANC Youth League throughout the country, the leadership and membership of SASCO, COSAS, the Young Communist League, and the Progressive Youth Alliance. I also want to greet the panelists who will be speaking later on the theme of building the militant, radical, and youth league as a champion of socioeconomic struggles in South Africa. That panel will be participating shortly after us. Let me greet the young people of our country, comrades and friends. Firstly, I want to wish everybody a happy new year, happy 2021, prosperous new year. Let's hope that it will be better than the previous year. Comrade Chair, how does one begin to pay tribute to President Peter Mokaba? That energetic, enthusiastic, fearless, talented, young but towering revolutionary who was full of life and filled with genuine love for his country and his people. Comrade Peter left us too soon. Where do I begin and end in honoring such an illustrious life, well lived, a life taken away from us at its prime, when as a people and as a movement, we were still expecting so much from him. Dear friends and comrades, these are some of the questions that came to mind as I humbly accepted the invitation to deliver this memorial lecture of Comrade Peter Mokaba, the giant, the Lion of the North. As I was pondering these questions, I came to the conclusion that it is perhaps fitting that I anchor this lecture on the words of the first president of the ANC Youth League, Comrade Anton Lembede, who, when making a clarion call for young people to occupy foremost trenches in the struggle for liberation, had the following to say: "We are not called to peace, comfort and enjoyment, but to hard work, struggle and sweat. We need young men and women of high moral stamina and integrity, of courage and vision. In short, we need warriors. This means that we have to develop a new type of youth of stoical discipline, trained to endure suffering and difficulties. It is only this type of youth that will achieve the national liberation for African people." Comrades, these words by Comrade Anton Lembede capture succinctly who Peter Mokaba was. He was part of those young people who at the height of the struggle for liberation understood that that was not a time for peace, comfort and enjoyment, but a time of hard work, struggle and sweat. He belonged to that generation of young people who were warriors, young people of stoical discipline who enjoyed suffering and difficulty, young people who helped to achieve national liberation. As a people and a movement, we owe President Mokaba and his generation of young lions a great debt of gratitude. Like we are doing today with the lecture and other related events, we must continue to honor these heroes and heroines of our liberation struggle, for without their sacrifices, we would not be where we are today. We must continue to keep their memory alive. We must immortalize their legacy, which we are proud heirs of. Accordingly, on this special occasion, as we remember the lives and times of Comrade Peter Mokaba, let us declare boldly that President Mokaba has not died. His spirit lives on. Peter Ramushwane Mokaba was born on this day in 1959 in Mankweng in Polokwane in the province of Limpopo. He was the son of Albert Mukhodi and Priscilla Mapitsi. He was baptized into the struggle for liberation at an early age in the 1970s when he was a learner at Huiti High School in Mankweng. It was at Huiti High School where he led school boycotts during the 1976 student uprisings. This led to his expulsion from school. However, he completed his matric on his own, 1978, and in 1980 enrolled at the University of the North, then called TEFLOP. Despite interruptions through state harassment to his studies, he did manage to complete a master's degree in development management at the University of Witwatersrand, Wits. He later initiated his second degree in economics with the University of Stellenbosch, but was unable to complete it due to his untimely death. May his soul rest in eternal peace. President Mokaba was detained under the Terrorism Act in 1977 and again in 1982, and was convicted for underground activities as a member of the People's Army Umkhonto weSizwe. He had received his military training in Swaziland, Mozambique, and Angola. He was sentenced to Robben Island, and in 1984, his sentence was suspended. When he came back, he went to work for the United Democratic Front, which was launched in 1983, the UDF. This is a period I got to work closely with Comrade Peter Mokaba. I was at the time the president of the Alexander Youth Congress, ANCYl, which was launched in 1983. Comrade Peter and myself were more than comrades, we became friends. I still carry with me fond memories of his frequent visits to Alexander Township. We also spent a lot of time at his house in Wendywood in Sandton. Although Comrade Peter was a hard-working revolutionary, he also enjoyed good life. He would often host parties for young people at his home, especially as he was taking a break from his punishing schedule in order to relax and recharge. One thing I admire most about Comrade Peter was that he did not equate enjoying a party with drinking alcohol and smoking cigarettes. I would observe him throughout the many evenings we spent together. He never touched alcohol nor smoked. Unlike many young people today who believe relaxation is about binging, Comrade Peter was a good example to young people that enjoyment must never be equated to the abuse of alcohol and smoking. In 1987, Comrade Peter became the first president of the South African Youth Congress, which later became the ANC Youth League after the unbanning of the liberation movements in 1990. South African Youth Congress, SAICO, was an important affiliate of the United Democratic Front. And I had an opportunity once again to serve with Comrade Peter in the leadership collective of the UDF as we engaged the apartheid regime for the liberation of our people. Under the leadership of President Mokaba, SAICO became a formidable organization of radical young people fighting against the apartheid regime. We also credit SAICO, which brought together various youth congresses across the country, for laying a firm foundation for building structures of the ANC Youth League, especially after the unbanning in 1990. After the 1994 democratic breakthrough, President Mokaba had an opportunity to serve in the democratic government and also as a member of parliament. He served as a deputy minister in the Department of Environment Affairs and Tourism during the presidency of the late President Nelson Mandela. As Deputy Minister of Environmental Affairs and Tourism, Comrade Peter brought his passion, his boundless energy, dedication, and enthusiasm to his portfolio. He became one of our country's foremost promoters of its natural beauty, fauna, and flora. He was a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC from 1991 until his untimely death in June 2002. Comrade Peter was survived by his wife and 3 children, Nomzamo, Tandiwe, and his son, Siabulel. We will always remember President Mokaba for his forthrightness and fearlessness. In him, we had a foot soldier who was totally dedicated to the good fight to liberate the people of South Africa, the fight to build a better life, in particular for the poor, the vulnerable, and the marginalized. We will continue to salute him for his courage, his hard work, and the fact that he was unflinching. He was an activist without match. Indeed, in President Mokaba, we had a cadre with virtues that were difficult to equal and practically impossible to improve on. Like the revolutionary song correctly captures it, Peter Mokaba, hauna ya tshwanang le wena. Comrade Peter Mokaba was there, leading from the front, during some of the most defining moments in our struggle for liberation. He was part of the death-defying generation of youth and students activists of the 1970s who took the fights directly to the enemy. He also occupied pride of place amongst the generation of young freedom fighters worthy of the distinguished title, Young Lions, bestowed on them by none other than President Oliver Reginald Tambo. It is this generation that in the 1980s responded with enthusiasm, sacrificing all and placing their lives at great risk to the call to render South Africa ungovernable and the apartheid system unworkable. During the negotiation process, President Mokaba's voice could be heard arguing persuasively that the pace and direction of negotiation must be determined by the people themselves. He asserted most profoundly that the people are their own liberators. President Mokaba understood that since negotiations were a terrain of struggle, they must not be pursued in isolation of others equally important forms of struggle. When conditions change and new kinds of approaches were required to engage the enemy, he was among those who could correctly read the national mood and call for appropriate action. Comrades, these were hallmarks of a young lion with wisdom and political maturity, an advanced detachment of our movement. Comrade Peter Mokaba and his generation of youth leaguers had internalized the historical role of the ANC Youth League in our society and in the broader liberation movement led by the ANC. They walked in the footsteps of Anton Lembede, Xolisi Majombozi, William Nkomo, A.T. Mda, Oliver Tambo, Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, and many others who founded the ANC Youth League as a progressive, disciplined force for radical change within the African National Congress and society. As directed by the ANC Youth League Manifesto of 1944, President Mokaba in his generation understood that the Congress Youth League had important task of uniting young people, training them, and instilling them revolutionary discipline, for it is among the ranks of the Congress Youth League that future leaders of the ANC would be recruited. Equally, they understood that the Congress Youth League has a responsibility not to detract the youth or the youth attention away from the Congress movement. In other words, the Youth League must mobilize young people behind the programs of the ANC. In this regard, we are reminded that rather than calling on people to defect from the ANC, after it had become a passive organization in the 1930s and in the early 1940s, the Youth League of 1944 called on young people to remain loyal and serve at the brains, trust, and power station of the spirit of African nationalism, and infuse the ANC with that new spirit. History records that it was the Youth Leaguers who, in the aftermath of the 1946 mine workers' strike, introduced a resolution at the ANC National Conference calling on members serving on the Native Representative Council to resign immediately. This was in line with the League's determination to secure full political rights for Africans. Although the resolution put forward by the Youth League was overwhelmingly defeated at the time, the League never relented on pursuing a radical agenda within the ANC. We know that it was the Youth League that played a major role in the conceptualization and also implementation of the Defiance campaign of the 1950s. Equally, many Youth League members played a key role in mobilizing towards and in the adoption of the Freedom Charter, that seminal document outlining an alternative to apartheid South Africa. From this, we learn that throughout history, the ANC Youth League has been an integral part of influencing, shaping the revolutionary outlook of the African National Congress. Young people of today can learn valuable lessons from the enduring examples of Comrade Peter Mokaba and his generation of Youth League leaders who took to heart and practiced what our forebears taught us to be the historic role of the ANC Youth League within our movement and society. Comrades, some of the immediate tasks of young people within the Congress movement include the rebuilding, renewal, and revival of all structures of the Youth League. Linked to this is the urgent need to move towards a successful National Congress of the ANC Youth League this year. We know that there are difficulties with the coronavirus. However, I think we must do our best that this year we must convene the Congress of the ANC Youth League to renew its leadership and adopt the programs of action to move forward. We reiterate that the process of rebuilding structures of the ANC Youth League, renewing and reviving the organization, must be led by young people themselves. When the founders of the ANC Youth League gathered at the Bantu Men's Social Club in Johannesburg to form the ANC Youth League in 1944, there were no elders who were pushing them around. Young people took the lead. Accordingly, I urge young people of the ANC to seize the moment and ensure that they are at the cutting edge of ongoing efforts to breathe life into the Congress youth movement and build it to become a powerful force behind the African National Congress. Comrades, this is part of your generational mission. This is part of honoring the legacy of President Peter Mokaba. You dare not falter. A renewed and revived ANC Youth League is also critical in the ongoing process of renewing the ANC itself. This we say because without the renewed ANC Youth League, the process of renewing the ANC will be a difficult one. A renewed and revived ANC Youth League also has an important role to play in intensifying the fight against gender-based violence, femicide, and the abuse of women, children, and young girls. The ANC Youth League is best placed to lead the charge towards economic emancipation of young people, especially young women, to eliminate their financial and economic dependence on men, which exposes them to abuse. Comrades, we also need a renewed and revived ANC Youth League to put its collective shoulder to the wheel in ongoing efforts to advance radical socio-economic transformation, whose progressive content should include the following: rooting out corruption and building a developmental state capable of leading a sustained period of inclusive growth, empowerment, and job creation. Accelerating the inclusion of Black people, women, the youth, and people with disabilities in the economic mainstream. Managing our country's economy and public finances in a sustainable manner, and also forming transformative partnership with the private sector to accelerate economic inclusion, growth, investment, and job creation. We need young people organized under the banner of the ANC Youth League to join the front lines in efforts to overcome our society's inherited structure of inequality, poverty, and unemployment. Young people's voices must be heard as we seek to put behind us our past of low and declining economic growth, falling per capita incomes, as well as low public and private investments. In particular, we expect young people of the ANC Youth League to enrich the process we are currently engaged in as a country, the process of economic reconstruction and recovery. This is an important process designed to deal with unprecedented levels of economic contraction and job losses resulting particularly from COVID-19 and other economic crises. We need fresh and innovative ideas from young people on how to reignite the economy. Let us make the economic recovery plan announced by President Cyril Ramaphosa workable and successful. Comrades, the COVID-19 pandemic continues to devastate lives and livelihoods. By all accounts, we are in the eye of the storm in the battle against this pandemic, as we have now entered the second most deadly wave. I've heard in the news that in the Western Cape, they might be already moving to the third wave. So, comrades, the numbers of those infected and those succumbing to the pandemic are rising alarmingly. We take this opportunity to convey our deepest condolences to the families of those who have lost their loved ones due to COVID-19. We also wish those who are hospitalized and are sick from this virus a speedy recovery. The painful reality we are facing is that this pandemic will still be with us, at least for the foreseeable future. Let us salute our frontline health workers and staff in our hospitals, the nurses, the doctors, those in emergency services, the police, the army, and other first responders, many of whom are young people who on a daily basis put their lives at risk to save lives of others. To all of you, we say, keep up the good spirit. You are our first, last, and only line of defense. Though the road may seem long, dark, and windy, do not give up. Do not lose hope. Equally, we would like to urge all South Africans to observe without fail all the restrictions aimed at curbing the spread of this deadly pandemic. In particular, we urge you to always wear your mask when in public, wash and sanitize your hands regularly, and avoid crowded places and events. By changing our behavior, we can make a significant contribution in defeating this pandemic. It is in our hands. We commend the work of our government, led by President Cyril Ramaphosa and our cabinet, to save lives and livelihoods during this difficult period. We also applaud ongoing efforts to secure and distribute as speedily as possible and as equitably as possible the vaccine. Comrades, Anton Lembete's clarion call for young people to occupy the foremost trenches in the struggle for liberation remains relevant to this day. Once again, this is not a time of comfort and enjoyment, but of hard work, struggle, and sweat to deliver on the promise of a better life for all. We still need young men and women of high moral stamina and integrity, of courage and vision. We need warriors. We need a new type of youth of stoical discipline, trained to endure suffering and difficulties. It is only this type of youth, the type of youth of the caliber of President Peter Mokaba, that will take our struggle towards a national democratic society that is united, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous to a high level. In conclusion, I want to once again wish all the young people in our country well as we battle the coronavirus and other challenges that our country is facing. May the spirit of Peter Mokaba give us strength as we go through these difficulties. Long live the spirit of President Peter Mokaba. Long live.
Long live.
Long live.
Thank you very much.
Long live. Thank you very much, TG, for a very informative lecture, which also reminds us all, as we are listening here, that the Youth League is supposed to be the body of opinions within the ANC. And we are longing for that Youth League. And the importance of inclusivity as we are renewing, reimagining, and reviving the Youth League is one of the important highlights from this memorial lecture, which I think all of us who are mandated with that task by the ANC should take with us and ensure that we walk the talk. Thank you very much, TG, for always availing yourself when we ask on you to speak to young people, and your support is very much appreciated by all of us in the NYTT. Without wasting time, I'm going to invite the coordinator of the NTT, Comrade Sibongile Besani, to do a closing remark. Nzund, where are you? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, over to you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Convener. And let me acknowledge the leadership of the ANC as led by the Treasurer General of the ANC, Comrade Paul Mashatile. Let me also send a word of gratitude to everyone who has actually attended this August occasion, especially in particular, the former leaders of the ANC Youth League. I want them to know that we are grateful of their legacy, to be part and parcel of this heritage, the ANC Youth League. And as the NYTT will leave no stone unturned to ensure that this legacy does not die in our hands. We want to assure them of our commitment to hand over this organization to their rightful custodians, who are young people. I must also thank everybody who has played a role in ensuring that this event takes place, despite the hiccups that we just experienced now. But we are very grateful with the high participation and attendance of this occasion. And we also want to thank everybody who will be taking part further on this program. We want to thank you, Treasurer General, for actually immortalizing President Peter Mokaba through Limbete, for immortalizing President Peter Mokaba through his very own revolutionary deeds. We are grateful for the fact that you have taken us through the clarion call made by Limbete that the ANC Youth League needs warriors of stoical discipline. I think it is a message that is not only applicable to the young people only, it is also applicable to us, part and parcel of the NYTT and the broader liberation movement. And we want to thank everybody who has taken part in this program and who will also be continuing to take part in this immortalization of President Peter Mokaba. Thank you very much, Program Director, Corporate Convener. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Pesani. Comrades, friends, leadership of the ANC in our midst, and young people who have attended the program on this platform. We are now going to move to the second phase of our program, the panel discussion. And that second phase of our program will be chaired or facilitated by Comrade Uloyiso Lugayeni Masuku. I'm going now to hand over to Comrade Uloyiso. I saw her earlier on the platform. Magam Zabalazo, are you ready?
Yes, Comrade Fini, thank you.
Okay, now Comrade Loiso is going to take over from here, and we are hoping that all of us will be able to participate on this program. Can you mute your mic already? Can you mute your mics? Comrade Tony, can you mute your Comrade Shanas, can you mute the mics of the people that are muted? So we are hoping that in this second part of our program, we will be orderly and we will be listening attentively because our panelists is a group of young people, and also it's intergenerational, and it becomes very important that all of us, we listen attentively and observe the discipline that we observed in this program, that the lecture which the TG has just delivered. Thank you very much again. Over to you, Comrade Loiso. But before that, Comrade Shanas, can you please play the video? And then Comrade Loiso will be taking over. Thank you.
Most recent images coming from South Africa focus on Mandela and his generation, the people who came to politics in the 40s and 50s. But young people in South Africa are energizing the movement. These are the kids they call the Young Lions, known for their battles with police and their militant marches. They have their own leaders too, young people who have also done hard time in prison and detention. Peter Mokaba is president of SAICO, the South African Youth Congress. He says the youths have been inspired by the older generation, men like Mandela.
I mean, the majority of the youth that are in SAICO today do not know Nelson, but each and every song that they sing is about that comrade. See, it is in their culture, it is in their politics, social life, it is in the games that they play, it is in their bloodstream, and it is also in my bloodstream. When you talk about Peter Mokaba, you are talking about the Freedom Charter, you are talking about SAICO, you are talking about the ANC, you are talking about my people.
On the ground, the youth are getting frustrated every day. And I think that is the mistake of all of us. I'm not blaming any particular person in the African National Congress. And the youth are asking, what is it that we fought for exactly?
Young Mazan, kill a man, shoot to kill, young Mazan, kill the poor, the farmer.
We need to talk about African tradition. There's no such thing as, this was not a statement. It's not a statement of any kind. and wouldn't be read by any of this African youth as a statement. In Xhosa, this particular form of art, similar, is called Igwijo. And Igwijo is not a statement. It's not a political statement. It's a chant. You use it to miss. For instance, Amakwengo, when they are going over long distances, they would be doing this thing. It's not a statement. You see, part of the problem with this is that somebody who comes from outside of that African culture interpreted it. And indeed, when you then write there, Peter Mokaba said, kill a boer, kill a farmer, he didn't. In the sense of a statement which represents policy. And it would not have been taken as a statement that represents policy. So there's no ANC policy which says kill a farmer, kill a boer and all that. But there would be Amakwijo of all sorts. You have a Zulu song, not quite Igwijo, but it's traditional songs. Now, it's not a statement. It's not a statement I'm making that I will never visit Zululand. It's a song. I don't think we really...
We must organize it in such a way that we make every strategy or tactic that we adopt, be it negotiations or be it armed struggle, to succeed. We should not marshal our forces only for negotiations. I think when we adopted the strategy of negotiation to effect, it is not an alternative to others, but additional and even a product of those other strategies that we have implemented. But now, it does seem as if today, everything that we are asked to do is to safeguard negotiations and to become the prisoners of this process of negotiation. There was a time when this government misbehaved, and when some firm action was required from the liberation movement. Comrades suggested things such as suspension of talks, but they were confronted with a very definite question: and what else? What are you going to do? We then realized.
Thank you very much, Comrade Shanas, for screening that video. Thank you very much, Comrade Thandi, and good evening to all the comrades. The acknowledgements have already been done, so I will not repeat that. But I do want to say one important thing that the TG said that I think is important is that he's urging young people to seize the moment. and we dare not fail. For those who are on social media, please continue to hashtag Mokaba 62, hashtag ANC 109. My name is Loyiso. I'm going to be your facilitator for this session, and I will start by introducing our panelists. We have a very powerful session that we're going to host with our panelists. I'm going to start with Dr. Nombuso Shozi, who's a medical practitioner. She will be one of our panelists. We've also got Dr. Bandile Hadebe, and he is the portfolio executive for healthcare at the BCX, which is the largest system integrator in our country and a telecom subsidiary. He is a graduate from Nelson Mandela School of Medicine as well, and he holds various directorship roles. One of the important things is that he has also served as special advisor to the CEO of the State Information Technology, SITA, as well as lead for the healthcare vertical and dimension data, where he was managing various platforms. He has served in the ANC Youth League Subcommittee for Health and currently serves on the ANC KZN Subcommittee of Education, Health and Sciences. We've also got Busi Siwe, who is better known as Comrade Busi Numalo. She is a University of Cape Town alumni who can be described as a passionate LGBT IAQ+ community activist at the forefront of challenging issues of young people. They are a former UCT SASCO BEC SRC deployee that led for 2 terms and currently regional task team of the ANC Youth League Dula Omar region and head of the Gender Women Portfolio Subcommittee. We've also got Comrade Kheti Ngwenya, who is a South African entrepreneur and businessman. He is the founder and managing director of School Media South Africa, one of the largest media and community upliftment companies within schools across South Africa. Also the co-founder of Contiloop SA, as well as the acting deputy curator of the Johannesburg Global Shapers Forum. We also have Comrade Phoebe. I think you will all know that Comrade Phoebe is our current GM. When Comrade Tandi was talking, she did say this is also intergenerational. Comrade Phoebe has been involved in political education in the Youth League and in the ANC in many ways. She is a board member of the OR Tambo School of Leadership, and she was active in the student movement in the 80s. You will recall, comrades, that Comrade Phoebe is one of our first female secretary generals in the ANC Youth League for the period 1996 to 1998. And she served in the NEC of the ANC. Comrade Phoebe is also part of a board member of the Mapungube Institute, which I think we all know that it is a think tank and was a member of the Cities Alliance. One of the most important things about Comrade Phoebe is that she's a co-owner of Koloza Books, which publishes Pan-African children and young adult book. And she's an avid reader and book collector. And she served South Africa as an ambassador to Poland. These are our panelists, comrades. Our panelists are going to have 7 to 8 minutes each. And I think I want to start firstly with you, Comrade Phoebe. The TG spoke at length about President Mokaba. But I think we would like to ask you as well to just tell us about your journey, reflect on your struggles, but also your approach on how you did things in your time and how you think this generation can benefit and learn as well, particularly because you were there and you have first-hand experience together with the comrades that you led with in the mission that you had, that was your generational mission. Over to you, Comrade Phoebe.
Thank you very much, Program Director. The Treasurer General, I assume you can hear me. All the current leadership of the NYTT, NEC members of the ANC, of the Women's League, as well as my former colleagues, Comrade De Boer, Comrade Jerry, Comrade Andries. The list is too long, but comrades, compliments for the new year. I met Comrade Peter Mokaba in 1985 in December, when we were having the National Conference of ANCYl, which is the forerunner of SASCO, and he addressed that conference in the context of building a national youth organization. And what I want to focus on in my 7 minutes, just about 4 aspects of the leadership of Comrade Mokaba, but also the generation of young lions that we are talking about. Comrade Brian has asked the question about what defines, when is the cutoff point for the young lions, and that the new generation will have to name themselves. But let me start off with the first issue. The South African Youth Congress in April 1990 took a decision at its National Congress in Kanyamazan in Mpumalanga, then Nelspruit, that it will dissolve itself, that it will change from a federal structure that consisted of youth movements, the Alexandra Youth Congress, the Soweto Youth Congress, the Cape Youth Congress, youth congresses in Sekhukhune, in KwaZulu-Natal, in Mpumalanga, Port Elizabeth Youth Congress. Across the country, you had these independent, autonomous youth organizations and youth congresses that came together under the federation, which was the South African Youth Congress. And in 1990, we took this decision that we will form a unitary structure and move towards into the ANC Youth League. Now, after the decision was taken at the Congress, and the purpose of forming a unitary structure was to be able to, once we start the process of rebuilding the ANC Youth League as a legal organization, to make it possible for SAICO to transition into the ANC Youth League. And there was some resistance about it. There were a body of opinion that said, no, SAICO should not dissolve itself and form into the Youth League, that we should continue as a youth council, etc., etc. But that was our decision of our National Congress. And part of the decision that was taken and what happened consequently after that is the fact that we didn't just take a declaration to say that we are now dissolving, and you then change from a federal structure to a unitary structure overnight. What it took was organization, and Comrade De Boer and others will remember, I don't know whether Comrade Nyami is here, Jerry, and so forth, can remember that it took hard work to be able to go youth congress by youth congress, township by township, village by village, and to be able to give effect to this decision, so that by the time that we do then form the ANC Youth League, we have an organization with membership that has a branch executive committee that's been elected, that understand the constitution of SAICO, but also the constitution of the ANC Youth League, and understand why, as a youth congress, we've taken the decision to transition into the ANC Youth League. In addition to that, comrades, and this is the importance of organization, which Comrade Peter Mokaba believed in so passionately. We had this decision and also discussion paper about the move into the ANC Youth League, the move from a federal organization towards a unitary organization. There was also the discussion document around the autonomy of the ANC Youth League as we start the process of rebuilding the ANC Youth League, and the fact that that we fought for the autonomy of the Youth League because it came from an understanding that if one look at youth movements across the continent, in other parts of the world, that unless you have a vibrant youth movement that is able to run its own affairs, that can elect its own leadership, that can develop its own policies, then you don't allow young people to be able to make their own mistakes and to be able to learn in the process of struggle. So that was the second organizational task that we had, and we had to also engage with the ANC leadership about this question about the autonomy of the Youth League, about why it's important, etc. The third area, comrades, of that period, and I'm talking about early to mid, the end of 1990, was this question about what then happened in relation to the understanding of the ANC Youth League as a multi-sectoral organization. How do we then go about organizing in the townships, organizing in the villages? But then the question then arose, what about the student youth? And this is where the decision was taken in 1990, and a discussion document which was drafted at a time by the late Comrade Derek Masook, Tabang, Comrade Gaugelo and others, to be able to look at what is the role of student youth, because they are critical throughout the continent, throughout the world, the generation of Lembede, the generation of Biko, and so forth. So that was the third area that we looked at as part of our organizational tasks at the time. The fourth area was looking at the question about the building of a broad youth front. So that by the time that we got to the point of setting up the Provisional National Youth Committee, it wasn't just SAICO and the ANC youth section that came together, but we also involved SASCO of the time, we also involved NUSAS, we involved COSAS, we involved the young Christian students, the Student Union for Christian Action, I think it was called, and other progressive of the Progressive Youth Alliance, or what is today known as the Progressive Youth Alliance. So the Youth League and SAICO always located itself not in isolation, but in the midst of a broad progressive movement of young people. And that was another of the key organizational tasks. So whether it is at national level, at provincial level, at the branch level, this is how we defined our organizational tasks. And then the last important part, or the one before last important part of it, is that from the onset, and particularly if you look at the 1990 Congress of SAICO, where the decision was taken that we're moving into the ANC and into the ANC Youth League. Comrades may recall in the 1987 Congress of SAICO, 1987, when SAICO was launched, we had one woman that was elected as onto that NEC, Comrade Pua Peters. By the time that we got to the second SAICO Congress in 1990, there was a very clear position, and that was based on the work that Comrade Pua done with other women from across the country, where we said that you cannot have a youth movement where you exclude half of your population of young people, and those are the young women. And we need to look at how do we ensure that young women play their role within the youth movement, play their role within SAICO, but also play their role within the ANC Youth League as we move in there. And at that Congress, from one member of the National Executive Committee, there were about, I think, 4 or 5, Comrade Pua, if I'm right, Comrade Numi Sekondlo, the late Comrade Brenda Leonard, myself, I'm trying to remember who else was there, but there were about 4 or 5 of us together with the joint Comrade Pua on the NEC of SAICO as a result of the organizational work that we've done. And that has always been a part of the ethos of the ANC Youth League, to be able to look at how do we ensure that we at the cutting edge of gender equality. The ANC still has to have a female Secretary General. The Youth League already has 2. The ANC still has to have a female, Comrade Sharon Davids. Thanks a lot, Comrade De Poor. The ANC still has to have a female Treasurer General, Comrade Pemi Majudina, that's on the platform as well. Comrade Nikiwe Num served as Treasurer Generals of the ANC Youth League. So the ANC Youth League have always been also at the cutting edge of the struggle for gender equality in the country. So that was part of the organizational task. And then, of course, the importance of understanding the twin task of the ANC Youth League. And we've defined those twin tasks as firstly that the ANC Youth League is responsible for mobilization, the political mobilization of young people behind the vision of the ANC, of the liberation of our people, and the building of a national democratic society. And this political mobilization of the ANC has two components. The first one is that we are a preparatory school. The Youth League is a preparatory school for new cadres of the movement, and that's why we decided that we will continue to start our age at 14 years, to be able to make sure that we socialize young people in Congress politics, in non-racial politics, in non-sexist politics, as well as in democratic politics, and that we develop leadership. So that preparatory school role remains an important part of the twin task of the ANC, of the Youth League. But the second part of that twin task is that the Youth League is a body of opinion within the ANC. If one, for example, look at the contribution from that clip where Comrade Peter Mokaba spoke about at the 1991 conference of the ANC in Durban about the strategy and tactics. And the point that he made there was that, and it was a debate at the time, that you can't, that when we look at and we adopt a multiplicity of tactics, it doesn't mean that other tactics are being put to the back burner. Because there was a body of opinion within the ANC that say that we should negotiate, we must demobilize MK, we must demobilize our mass action, we must demobilize the sanction campaign, we must demobilize the underground. And our argument as a Youth League, as represented by Comrade Peter Mokaba at that conference of the ANC, was to say that we need to look at all of these different aspects of struggle. Negotiations is an additional to be able to reach our objective of liberation of our people. So the role of being a body of opinion within the ANC is an important part of that political role. We can't just be a preparatory school, but we must also be able to bring ideas to the ANC. We must also be able to engage in the issues of the day facing the country, and to be able to give direction and impetus and energy and new ideas towards and renewal, as the TG said, towards the ANC. So that's the first part of the twin task, that the ANC Youth League have a very political role to play, to be able to be that preparatory school as well as a body of opinion. The second part of the twin task, Comrade, is that the Youth League is responsible for championing the aspirations of young people, and that aspirations change over the years. The 1944 generations of Lembede, of Ma Sisulu, of Tata Sisulu, of Mandela, and others had the task of ensuring that it begins to mobilize young people, that it radicalized the ANC, that it mobilized the oppressed people to be able to confront a system that at the time was consolidating grand apartheid, and hence the program of action, the proposal for the Defiance campaign, and building a more militant movement. The same
Comrade Phoebe, please summarize for us. Comrade Phoebe?
Okay, I'll do that. The same happened in the 1960s. And what does that then mean for the young people of today? In the same way that previous generations have defined their twin task and how they manifest the twin task today, in the same way the current generation, what contribution does it make towards the renewal of the ANC? What contribution does the Youth League makes towards fighting for the aspirations of young people today, with regards to economic emancipation, access to land, access to finance, access to job opportunities, and access to business opportunities within a context of an African agenda. And I think that this is what we mean when we talk about each generation defining the mission. We can advise, we can share our experiences, but at the end of the day, it is this generation that will have to define what the twin task means for them today and how they will then in practice organize to be able to give effect to those twin tasks of the Youth League. Thank you very much, comrades.
Thank you, Comrade Phoebe. And I think you raising a very important aspect of inclusion and broader participation from society. And I think the panelists today reflect that as we look at issues of gender equality, LGBTIQ plus community, and of course people, youth in the business sector. I'm going to invite Comrade Kgethi. Comrade Kgethi, the TG, when he spoke about the need for fresh, creative ideas, and the participation of young people, particularly in assisting government in leading the economic recovery plan as pronounced by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Can you just touch on that, as well as look and speak to us as a young person in business, as well as the impact of COVID-19 that the TG also spoke about, because this pandemic has obviously affected youth economic development, as well as active participation of young people. So if you could please just use your 7 minutes to speak on that, and of course reflect on the points that the TG made about a fresh, creative caliber of ideas from young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Louisa, and thank you for the ANC Youth League NTT for having me. My name is Kgethi Ngwenya. I'm the Managing Director of a 100% Black-owned youth marketing agency. I am, just a correction, I'm the former curator of
Sorry, Comrade Kgethi, you are muted.
Okay, should I start from scratch? Sorry about that.
You can start. We got you up until the introduction.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Just a correction, I'm the former curator of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers, Johannesburg, and the current Global Shaper. I've been in business for many years, since an early age, and business is more about what I know. But today is not about me and my success as a business person. Today we get to commemorate the life and times of the former ANC Youth League President, Peter Mokaba. And most importantly, I'm here to represent the views and challenges, aspirations, including the immediate tasks of youth in business. The population largely affected by poverty and unemployment inequalities are young people between the ages of 14 to 35. Simply put, 3.3 young million people are unemployed. Alarmingly, a major cohort of this is unemployable, without the required training to participate gainfully in various sectors, particularly entrepreneurship sector. Business has a meaningful role to play as part of the contribution of resolving socio-economic struggles confronted by society at large. If more young people are given the opportunity to unleash their full potential in the business space, then they can in turn empower their communities. Practical example, I founded a business in 2010. It's 2021 now. We've managed to employ over 100 people. However, there are many challenges faced by small businesses, matters such as training, access to funding, and the most common issue is sustainability due to lack of support and resources. We need to radically change our minds, thinking. I quote, "The most important weapon of the oppressor, the mind of the oppressed," unquote, Steve Biko. Young people need to forget about NYDA, about the NEF, CIFA, and government funding for that fact. We need to start looking at the opportunities around us. I will use an example of simple things like toothpicks. Did you know that most of the supply of toothpicks in South Africa are imported? But yet we have forests and trees in South Africa. Young people need to use what is around them and start to think small with a big vision. Today, all people want when they go into business is hoping for a wish to get a tender. I'm comfortable here to say I have been in business for over 10 years and haven't received a single tender, they call it. I've just been able to service what the market needs. As part of my conclusion, Code Peter Mokaba, the Lion of the North, as commonly known in his character. Radicalism is about change of ideas, change of policy, change of thinking, and most importantly, change of leadership. I would like to thank you for having me on this session, and I'd like to wish ANC for tomorrow, 109 years, a happy birthday. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Kheti. I love when you say we must service what the market needs. As young people, we must just not always be looking at traditional businesses. So I've seen on social media, there's a lady who is now busy dispatching eucalyptus oil across Africa. And I think that's a start in terms of, because COVID is here and people believe in utilizing eucalyptus oil. So she's servicing what the market needs. And I think that's a very important message that you're sharing with us. Comrade Bandile, you are a doctor, you're an academic, you're a professional in the health sector. Let's reflect on the impact of COVID-19 and the role of youth in fighting against the spread. And perhaps can you also share with us perspective on the vaccines? Just a bit on the vaccines and their administration, because there's a lot of different views, but because you are in the space, maybe you could also just touch a little bit on that for us within your 7 minutes, but obviously starting with the impact of COVID-19. Over to you, Comrade Bandile.
Thanks, Comrade Lolo. Good evening to the leadership of the ANC as led by the TG. Good evening to the Women's League under the leadership of Mambata, the leadership of the NYTT, former leaders of the Youth League, the PYA, and my fellow panelists who are here. And good evening to everybody who's joining us from the different platforms. Look, Lola, just as a part of opening, I think January 8 as a concept gives us an opportunity to reflect on organizational successes over time, where we've come from as the ANC and where we've arrived to date. It gives us an opportunity to take stock of, have we really done what we should have done in the last year or in the last couple of years? How do we actually improve on our endeavors to take more people with us into a better state of living? And I think you would have had to be visiting South Africa from Mars to not appreciate that in the last 26 years or so, the African National Congress has really taken South Africa forward and has really improved lives, both comprehensively at community level, but also at individual level. I mean, from a personal perspective, I think I'm a direct product of the Freedom Charter, which declared that the doors of education shall be open to all.
and the type of schools that I ended up accessing at the back of that particular clause in the Freedom Charter are precisely why I am where I am today. And so January 8 gives us that particular taking of stock. I think before I get into the hardcore healthcare issues, and I think some of them are going to be carried by Comrade Nombuso, I just wanted to touch briefly on really the core of the conversation around Comrade Peter Mokaba and how it relates to young people in the country and how it relates to society in general. I was promised that I was going to be given presentation power, so I'm going to try just share a quick deck. This is not going to be one of those many slides. It really is just 2 slides. And I'm going to put this in presentation mode. Yeah. So I think we must ask ourselves as young people, or youngish people, some of us who've come out of the youth league at this stage, as to what does really a radical character of the ANC Youth League mean in our current epoch, in where we find ourselves as a society, right? And that has to be in relation to the conversation around organizational renewal in the ANC. Now, if you understand organizational renewal in the ANC correctly, it's not something that's just come recently in Nazareth. In fact, it's a conversation that dates back when we celebrated our centenary and we released that document on the second transition, and we started speaking about the renewal of the ANC. And the conversation around the renewal of the ANC is a self-diagnosis by ourselves to say that maybe certain components of our movement, certain characteristics of our movement, certain practices and certain traditions are no longer relevant. And so we need to revisit them and renew them and collide into new norms and practices that are relevant for the time that we find ourselves in. And that is a direct question to the ANC Youth League today, as to say, how are you then assisting to drive the agenda for renewal? We can't drive the agenda for renewal when we keep doing the same things that we've always done. So what are those new things? What are the new ideas that we're coming up with? What are the old ideas that we're shedding away? What are the faulty ideas that we are modifying to ensure that the African National Congress continues to be relevant? One of the dangers of being in a successful movement like ours is that we slowly become very obsessed about our past accolades and our past successes, and we lose track of the fact that we are creating a new society that we are not keeping up to date with. And so the conversation around renewal and a radical new character of the ANC Youth League needs to be about reimagining the African National Congress. How do you build a relevant organization today? If we were to start the ANC today for the first time and we were not celebrating our 110 years, what would be those things that we would put in place? What would be those ideas that we would put in place to ensure that the African National Congress is a relevant organization? And that's the taking stock that we need to make during this period of the January 8 commemorations. One of the fundamental issues that I want to suggest that could become a conversation going forward is that we need to have a genuine obsession about taking our people with us. We have not brought everybody into the fruits of our democracy. And so we need a genuine obsession about taking our people with us. And that must be a defining characteristic of a radical youth league in the context of renewal of the organization as a whole. We need to bring the majority of the people with us in whatever form and in whatever shape. That needs to be our characteristic as young people in the country, where we bring the majority of the people with us. I think more often we confuse radicalism with anarchy, with shop steward voices and shouting from top of the mountains. It's not that. It needs to be strategic. It needs to be organized. It needs to be very relevant to the challenges and the needs that we're facing on the day. And that's the first point that I want to drive home in relation to the broader topic that we're discussing. Secondly, there is no point to education if it's used as a private asset for self-gratification. In a country where we've declared education as a tool for progression, you can't obtain education as a young person and then use it for self. Our education as a concept needs to be deeply rooted in the communities that we find ourselves. For those of you who visited Cuba, for instance, you would know that if you look at their healthcare system, it's actually community focused. The general practitioners, the specialists, and whoever is in the system spends more time in the community trying to find the conditions, trying to prevent the conditions before they happen. They don't sit and wait in the hospital for the patients to come in. I mean, some people have actually accused us of running a sick care system instead of a healthcare system because we don't have this positioning of our education as an asset of the community. And this is a driver that we need to be looking at as young people to make sure that whatever enlightenment I have acquired needs to benefit the many scores of other people who have not had the luxury to walk through the doors of education. Selection and election by merit. I think this is a conversation that has been starting to creep up in our movement that we've not actually structured properly. And we need to be honest about this. The type of leadership we put in place, the type of individuals we make as the faces of our organization have got both a positive and negative impact, depending on who they are and depending on the quality of individuals that we put in there. So we need to get to a stage as the ANC and the ANC Youth League, and with the TG having confirmed, and we hope this confirmation is actually going to stick this time because we've had these confirmations before. The TG having confirmed that the Youth League is going to go to an elective conference this year, we need to be making that decision on merit, not on people who can amass the necessary support but do not have the necessary content that's going to make us relevant to the bulk of young people in society who are looking at us as an organization. How are we bringing the concept of content and quality as a deciding factor for who we elect as young people, for who we elect as the ANC? This is a driver that we need to be able to do. And we can't demand better from the mother body if when we go to our own elections, we emerge with a leadership that we're not even quite sure what it is that they're going to be doing on our behalf. So that conversation around merits needs to define who we are. That conversation around merits needs to be a fundamental thread in the DNA of the Youth League and in the DNA of the ANC going forward. And we need to find a different concept of how to think about these things and how to arrive at these things so that we actually have a leadership that is consistent with the brand and the image and the resonate that we are trying to find in society. That's not going to happen with the factional way that we run our elections. That's not going to happen with the lobbying mechanisms that we currently use within our elections. We need to rethink about this. And I don't think I have all the answers, but I want to plant this idea as a conversation that we need to carry going forward and see how we collide into answers around this issue. We resolve on the concept of radical economic transformation, which was then bastardized and stolen by different sections in society. And I think it's important that when we revisit our radical character as the Youth League in the context of a organization that is trying to renew itself, is that we re-purify the concept of RET. Because there's nothing wrong with the fundamentals that are being raised in the need to radically transform our economy. We cannot sit and just celebrate political liberation in the absence of economic liberation. And the personalities and the factionalism that is now tainted radical economic transformation has derailed us as young people and as a movement as a whole to drive fundamental change so that the majority of our people have got access to resources, have got tangible socioeconomic change within their lives, and are able to progress and enjoy the fruits of democracy. And one of the things that I really need us to do when we think about this is that we need to stop to think about it as a popular parlance that emerged in the State of the Nation address in 2017. That's not radical economic transformation. Radical economic transformation has been a continuing thread that you can trace back in the ANC. I mean, if you consider the fact that in 1961, when Chief Albert Luthuli was receiving his Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo, he spoke about the need to radically transform the economy, which at that time was a conclave of white people. Comrades, can you mute that person? if you look at the Frelimo speech by Comrade Oliver Tambo in 1983 at the 4th Congress of Frelimo, he speaks about radical economic transformation. In fact, Oliver Tambo speaks about dismantling the economy so that we construct an economy that is equitably shared. Dismantling the economy. So radical economic transformation cannot be a concept that is now bastardized and is sitting in the hands of certain individuals and is limiting us from driving an agenda of changing society to the extent that we're able to bring scores and scores of our people with us into our democracy. If we do not drive this conversation from a genuine perspective, which was intended when we resolved on it as the African National Congress, we're going to struggle to bring the majority of our people. I mean, Oliver Tambo speaks about dismantling the economy that we found. And one of the ways to actually become very honest about radical economic transformation is that we need to interrogate the states that we inherited. I think 25 years down the line, some of us have enjoyed certain freedoms and certain comforts, and where we come from is becoming blurry. And we need to be honest about that. And we need to interrogate the states that we inherited so that we become brutally honest about what it is that we had set up the movement for and measure that against where we are and be honest about what it is that needs to be done. If you use the Freedom Charter, for instance, as the defining thrust of radical economic transformation, you will see that some of the things that are enshrined in the Freedom Charter are nowhere near being achieved. And so we need to go back to this concept and really drive the concept of RET from a genuine perspective that seeks to bring the majority of people with us.
Bandile, please summarize for us.
Lastly, on this issue, then I won't get to the second slide clearly. I think in summary, we are always told or convinced both domestically and globally that we've got high quality policies, high quality constitution, which might be true, right? But we need to be able to interrogate that and analyze it in the context of our reality and be able to say, if they are so of high quality, how come they've not assisted us? How come they've not assisted us to achieve these priorities? And maybe the policies might not be flawed. Maybe our ability to execute might be grossly flawed. And we then need to be able to be honest about that and say, what types of skills do we need in place? What types of institutional mechanisms do we need in place? What type of individuals do we need to be able to drive our policies so that we've got an organized and a structured radical program for driving necessary change and transformation within our society? Thank you, Comrade.
The 5 pillars that you have put out there are a clear demonstration that when the ANC has academics who are fresh and young and are in your caliber is really, really, really heartwarming. I think there's I'm receiving requests to please share your presentation. So if you could please do that, Comrade Bands, I've got an influx of requests for your presentation so that you can be able to share with comrades. Comrade Nombuso, following to that, you are a young frontline worker. And as a young frontline worker, you are at the coalface of the pandemic. And of course, I'm sure you've got some experiences to share and some challenges to share as well. I'd like to give you the platform to just speak to us and share what it is that you go through and the current challenges. And it doesn't have to necessarily be only about COVID-19. You could also just speak broadly as it relates to the challenges you face as a young doctor in the sector. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Network issues. Thank you for this opportunity. Greetings to everyone. I am Nombuso, as I've been introduced, and I'm just a mere servant of the people. I'm basically the person in the front line. I'm the shield. I'm the person that has been sent out to go and basically save our people. I'm basically sharing my experience. As a disclaimer, I'm not representing DOH, or I'm not representing private or public sector. I'm just sharing my personal experiences as one of the frontline workers. Basically, when we all started out in medicine, we were hopeful graduates, and we took an oath that we're going to do above everything, we're not going to do harm, right? And basically, when we went out, we were hopeful that we're not going to do harm. And in our work, in our line of duty, we are faced with many, many things. And one of the things that hit home for me is the emotional and psychological impact that this COVID-19 pandemic has caused, right? So as healthcare workers, there are many emotions that we go through. One of them is being facing moral dilemmas. Moral dilemmas is making decisions, tough decisions. As I work in a critical care unit, and in this unit, tough decisions are made. These decisions are with regards to who's going to get a ventilator, who's not going to get a ventilator, whose road has come to an end, and who needs to be given another chance. These decisions are not easy decisions, right? And it does affect you negatively. This then leads to a moral injury. A moral injury is what we describe as a feeling of disappointment as a healthcare worker, feeling
Comrade, we can't hear you.
Yeah, no, we can't hear him.
I think Nombuso has a network problem. We will try and get her back. We'll try and get Nombuso back. Comrade Nombuso, are you back? Okay. Comrades, please, can you try and inform her that there's a network connection? In the meantime, Comrade Busi, are you with us?
Yes, I am here.
In the meantime, can I, while we're trying to get Comrade Nombuso, can I give you the platform?
No.
She's logging back, Comrade Facilitator.
She's trying to log back.
Yes.
Comrade Nombuso? Okay, let's proceed with Comrade Busi in the meantime. Comrade Busi, over to you. Comrade Shanaz, please mute everybody and unmute Comrade Busi.
The African National Congress Treasurer General, Comrade Paul Mashadile, the former TG of the ANC Youth League and the Chief Whip of our movement, Comrade Pemi Matodina, President of the ANC Women's League, Mamba Tabili Dlamini, former SG of the Youth League and General Manager of the ANC, Comrade Phoebe Potliger, MMC in the Greater Johannesburg, Comrade Loyiso Masubu, members of the NYTT, as led by Comrade Thandi Mahambishala, MPL in the Western Cape, Comrade Nomin Gondlo, National Convener of the Young Women's Desk, led by Precious Banda, the NEC of SASCO and YCL, comrades joining us on Zoom and various social media platforms. It gives me a great pleasure to be part of this commemoration of the life and times of Comrade Peter Mokaba. The theme is about building a radical and militant ANC Youth League as champions of socioeconomic struggles in South Africa. Who President Mokaba was has been fully captured by the TG and doesn't need more elaboration. I would like to go into the lessons we can draw and the current state of the organization. The first thing is that we need to go back to basics. We need to go back to the drawing board. We must focus on political education. We need to establish classes to understand our present situation and how to move forward. In this time, we are begging for progressive youth leadership to provide us with the necessary leadership for our generation. We need to be more vibrant and emulate former firebrands like Peter Mokaba. We need to be loyal and disciplined members of the organization, and we need to understand the concept of collective leadership, which is a democratic central principle. We must never be afraid to be vocal and champion and challenge issues that the youth face. We need to come up with issues and solutions of what the youth is facing, and we need to be very pragmatic about it and not need to just end in sloganeering for popularism. We need to also address the gatekeeping by those who are old, as there is a perpetual refusal of the elderly to allow young people to take up space. There is a blatant refusal of innovation, of new ideas. We must build our own ideological space. The ideology of the 20th century doesn't necessarily work in the 21st century. We, the youth, must take up the mantling of translating our political thought into a more coherent modern response. We need to take the lessons of the past of the 20th century and their ideological basis as the Soviet Union no longer exists and look forward to the politics of today. The left today is a politics of intersectionality and introspection. We are currently facing two pandemics, gender-based violence and COVID-19. Women, children, members of the LGBTI community, differently abled people, and gender minorities in this country are experiencing abuse, violence, victimization on a daily basis. This is a growing concern of how serious the gender-based violence has escalated in this country. This is not normal. Society is sick. We can't operate like this. There is a clear social ill that needs to be confronted head on. The responsibility of coming up with solutions to the current challenges need to come from us all as a collective. We need to reflect on where we come from, the current socioeconomic conditions, and where we are going. The current state doesn't look promising. I believe that this is not the freedom we ever imagined. We cannot be chanting non-sexism and then turn around and enforce patriarchy at every opportunity we get. Men in the organization will be non-sexist until it's time to elect a queer or woman person in a position of leadership. The change needs to happen and needs to come within us. We live in a very homophobic society, and the injustices that the LGBTIQ+ community face in this country is very frightening. There are things such as trigger warning, corrective rape, and being killed for just existing. We have great legislation. It speaks about how everyone is equal, but in reality, that's not the case. Our constitution was the first in the world to protect from discrimination because of one's sexual orientation. The country was the first in Africa to legalize same-sex marriage. But after the spate of murders, something needs to be done to stop this hate crime. Queer people are experiencing violence on a daily basis in this country. This further highlights the vulnerable position we are in as minorities. They call us born free, but were killed by hate. Is this the price one must pay for existing? We are constantly living in fear for just being ourselves. I would like to live in a society where I don't have to pay with my life. Am I next? Why must the body count increase before we do something? The launch of the LGBTIQ+ desk has been one of the most progressive and historical moments in democracy. This should not be taken lightly at all. We have lots of work to do as we strive for this non-sexist society. What does this militancy look like as queer people within the organization? We need to imagine a youth league that is at the forefront of championing the struggles of the LGBTIQ+ community. The word militant should be a term that we use for inward reflection of the commitment of young queer people within the organization to continue to fight against patriarchy and gender equality in our lifetime. We must hold ourselves to a high militaristic disciplinary standard of changing the society that we live in, that is free from hate and intolerance. I'd like to see a youth league that is driving the radical transformation within the resolutions that go far beyond the sake of gender ratios for balancing. We need to get to a point where there is representation of the LGBTIA community in all structures, from branches to regions to province to national, even in the mother body and the alliances. We need representation that is always inclusive and diverse. I'd like to end off by saying that there is no space for homophobia or any form of intolerance in the organization or society. There will be nothing about us without us. Forwards ever, backwards never. May the fighting spirit of Peter Mokaba live amongst us and his revolutionary soul rest in power. Mandla.
Thank you so much, Comrade Busi, for that. And I think your input is important. It links to what Comrade Phoebe was speaking about earlier when she spoke about inclusion and the importance of ensuring that we have broader engagements, a youth league that is inclusive, and ensuring that everybody feels part of the society that we want to build. So thank you very much for that. And I think these points are also important to take forward, particularly in the preparation for the conference, because there are discussion documents that are at the final drafting stages. And I think some of these inputs will be important in those discussion documents going towards the conference. I just want to check before we play another video if Comrade Nombuso is back.
Yes, I am.
Thank you very much. Please proceed, because you were telling us about your experiences and how you as people in the front line, and the choices you have to make between who you give a ventilator to and who you don't. So please continue. You still have a good 5 minutes left.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much for that opportunity. So basically, as I was saying, even though I'm not personally making those decisions, but you're part of a team, and in that team, these decisions get made, right? Who's going to get a ventilator, who gets to live, who gets to not get a ventilator, all those things. It's part of moral dilemma that goes on a daily basis. So this then leads to moral injury, where you feeling doubtful, you basically feel like you have let your patients down. Besides letting your patients down, but you've also let yourself down, because remember, as a healthcare worker, you've taken an oath that you will never do harm to your patients. This does not always lead to a mental illness, the moral distress, but it can lead to fear. It can lead to anxiety, and the fear that we have as healthcare worker is, am I going to make it? When am I going to get the COVID-19? And if and when I do COVID-19, will I survive? Those are difficult things that go through our mind. So that's why I said fear is a big thing that is happening in our minds. And also, I've mentioned the fact that those who have even gotten COVID-19, they then suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, meaning that they are now very fearful to go back to work. They then do have other things, especially those that were in high care and those that almost who almost got into a ventilator. Also, just like losing losing colleagues, losing loved ones, and also not being able to attend their funerals because you're busy. I mean, you're a frontliner, you are a healthcare worker. You need to go back to work and you need to get on with life, right? Everybody thinks that as frontliners we are immune to death. They think that we are immune to things like psychological distress that as I've mentioned. And as going forward, I think that are things that need to be looked into as a department, and things that need to be looked into long-term psychological stressors that are caused by this pandemic. Healthcare workers that were there during the times or when AIDS was still lethal in South Africa, when it used to kill a lot of people, people are always saying that they never got over that. I remember talking to one of my colleagues. They said that during the times they were interns, and it's one of my senior colleagues, and they'll come to work and there'll be 20 people when they leave the shift, and when they come back there'll be like none because people have died. That was before the rollout of ARVs. People used to die in South Africa, and we thank God that we finally have ARVs, and people are then able to have a normal life expectancy. We thank science for that. So that's just the personal experience, I would say, in terms of the psychological impact that it has, and also being a mother, being a young person in South Africa, and knowing that your life is at risk. That's on its own, it has a negative impact. A lot of us now suffer from anxiety, things we never had. We fear going to work. We fear waking up, and we fear leaving our homes because we don't know what we're gonna come back with. And those are things that going forward, I think that's things that we need to think about, and just be patient with healthcare workers. There are a lot of people that come to work, and when they come to work, they basically expect us to perform miracles. And we are in the middle of a pandemic, as I've mentioned. So we need to get used to the new normal. I think as healthcare workers, we never got in for this, as I've said. We never got in to palliate patients. We always wanted to save. But moving forward, I've always said that as physicians, we seldomly heal, but we must always comfort our patients. And this is not the case with COVID-19, because you have to limit the time that you spend with these patients, because the longer you spend time with patients with COVID-19, the longer you're exposing yourself to the virus. You need to be gowned in full PPE if you are dealing with a patient with COVID-19, and you don't even allow visitors. So people are now dying alone, and this is not something that anybody can ever get used to. When people come with their loved ones to casualty, it's probably the last time that they will ever see them. Sometimes you even tell your patients to say, your relatives to say, don't you want to say something to your mom or to your relative because you might not come back. So those are just some of the experiences that we go through on a daily basis. And this is a lot of things that happen to other fellow healthcare workers. So people, when we talk about frontliners, people always assume that we're talking about nurses and doctors, right? But we have security guards, we have cleaners, we have porters, we have the non-medical staff, we have people that deal with laundry, people that do with linen, and those people are very important in the daily functioning of our healthcare system. And we need to make sure that we look into that. They also need to be supported with PPEs, personal protective equipment, because they are also exposed to the deadly virus for now, right? The challenges that we face as healthcare workers, besides the shortage of staff, the lack of PPE, protective equipment, as I've mentioned before, the lack of resources, human resources. So some of our workers go on sick leave, they have to go into isolation. So we lose healthcare workers by death, or sometimes others go into retirement. And there's basically no plan to fast track the employment of new staff members. And even though we are training doctors and nurses and also the medical staff, but sometimes they are not enough posts for these people. I know there was a time where we spoke about posts for ComServes, and it was not all ComServes were allocated posts, and yet we say that there is a shortage. So a proper budget needs to be allocated for these things to work. So a solution for what I think we are facing as a country in terms of the healthcare sector is implementation of our national health insurance. And I think we need to make sure that we fast track that. This will help us to redistribute the resources, because we all know that private sector only supplies or only caters for about 18% of the population. Not everybody has the medical aid. And yet we have 80% of the population needing 80% of the population being only allocated 20% of the resources. So I think we need to make sure that we fast track NHI by making sure that primary healthcare is prioritized. How do we prioritize primary healthcare? We need to make sure that we invest, and we need to make sure that we invest in preventative medicine. Because when we focus on tertiary or secondary, tertiary or regional medicine, we are now focusing on medicine when at its late stages, whereas we all know that prevention is better than cure. So this is what I wanted to say in terms of my experiences and solutions. And I feel like touching on the primary healthcare and prevention, we should not forget about nutrition. We know that most of our South Africans are hungry and they are unemployed. And it does affect us negatively as healthcare workers. Because sometimes when you talk about treatment, people will tell you that they are hungry and they are starving. So that's a major thing that we need to make sure that we focus on. In closing, I would like to encourage the youth to do not give up on maths and science, and to do take up careers in health, and to also focus on science as well, because science is very important. And also I would like to urge the governments to also make opportunities and employment opportunities for our young scientists. We don't even know how far are we in terms of our research, in terms of making the vaccine as South Africans. We are just basically taking what the world is telling us about the vaccination, and there's not much that we have done as scientists and as young healthcare workers in terms of our contribution to the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Comrade Nombuso. And I think what you're raising is important, because you are in essence saying to us that we need to be, when we visit hospitals, we need to understand that health workers are humans too. You used the words, I'll quote, you said, be patient with health workers. And I think that's a very important message that we all need to carry with us. But I think also what and it's part of, I think it links to what also Comrade Bandile was saying about execution of policies. Because you're saying that you are urging, and I guess the message is to our comrades who are here, who are in government, who are listening, to say we need to fast track the implementation of NHI, because that is what is going to assist in the healthcare sector. Thank you very much for that. Shanaz, before we take comments and messages on Facebook, I saw there are 2 questions. Are you ready with the video, or you just want me to read those 2 and then we can take the video at the end? Okay, let me read the. I'm waiting. Shanaz, you're not responding. Oh, you are responding. Thank you.
Comrade Peter Mokaba, vibrant
sober, a democrat, and a militant, who always shall have respected the will of the majority in any debate, never to have gone into any anarchic situation. We shall always miss you with your leadership skills that guided the movement of young people towards achievement of our liberation goals of a united, non-sexist and non-racial democracy that is prosperous. You have led, we shall remember you for that as we miss you during these days which require such leadership skills. Long live the spirit of Comrade Peter Mokaba. Long live.
My name is Joe Maswanganyi, the former Deputy President of the ANC Youth League. Today we're celebrating the 62nd birthday of the former President, Killer Man Peter Mokaba, a giant, a gallant fighter that all of us have served under him and have learned a lot from him and his collective. We have known Comrade Peter Mokaba in the 80s when we were serving in the structures of the South African Youth Congress and also South African National Student Congress when I was at the Tugumbeni College of Education between 1988 and 1990. By then, when I was at Tugumbeni, I was serving in the local branch of the Youth Congress. That's where I've learned a lot through comrades who were leading that branch. I also had the privilege to be appointed at a later stage to serve at the Provisional Regional Youth Committee of the Northern Transvaal, which was led by Comrade Thabo Masebe, to oversee the relaunch of the Youth League in the country. It were these structures that were responsible for organizing the Conference of Frontline in 1991, where Comrade Peter Mokaba was elected as the president. Under his leadership, the Youth League was very vibrant. It led the youth movement in the country. And I believe that if Peter Mokaba was still alive today, the youth movement would be very strong. The Youth League would be very strong. It will make sure that the interests of young people are championed. Today, there are so many young people who are unemployed. It is the responsibility of the Youth League and the youth movement in general to make sure that the interests of these unemployed youth are taken into consideration, and something has to be done. The interest of the student youth has to be taken into consideration. The interest of employed youth and all other youth in different subsectors should be championed by the Youth League. I believe that the Youth League will be united again and then have a very successful conference to make sure that it leads and no other organization other than the ANC Youth League should be the leader of the youth movement in South Africa. Long live the fighting spirit of Comrade Peter Mokaba, our president. Long live.
Comrade President, we are marking a 62nd anniversary under a cloud of COVID-19 the world over. In the South African situation, we are marking our anniversary while majority of our people, their life experience has not changed for the better. It is this life experience of our people that prompted us to take up arms for the liberation of our people. Today, in a democratic dispensation, we need to recommit and rededicate our energy and effort to ensuring that we mobilize the entire of society under the ban of the African National Congress to intensify the struggle to ensure that we change
the life experience of our people, so that out of their own experience, we can see freedom written in their faces. We will then know that we have arrived. But for now, the struggle continues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Shanaz. There are some comments on social media, but there are two direct questions. One is to Comrade Bandile about the presentation you gave. How do young people participate in a sector that is not allowing them space? There is no proper investment by government into innovation in Africa. Do you have suggestions you can make about that? That's one. And then there's a comment linked to a point Comrade Musi was making, a generic point on gender-based violence. This one, it says, it says, Comrade Batabile Dlamini, the issue of putative marriages is a cause for concern. Home Affairs must assist to find a way to assist women who are often coerced into marriages when the husband is already married to another spouse. Then there's a question, what is the plan for those over 35 who have no skills? In the time of Tata Peter Mokame's period, okay, this is just an encouragement. We are behind you, doctors and nurses. Our government needs to support you. That's an encouragement. Then there was one more question. I'll just check if it's there. Comrade Bandile, if you can please respond to that.
Sure. Thanks, Comrade Lolo. Look, I think it's a very broad question, right? And one of the things that we need to be cognizant of when we reclaim the ownership of the agenda for radical economic transformation is that it needs to be a structured program, right? So from a nature and quality perspective, it needs to be a structured program. It needs to follow certain prerequisite policy reforms that will drive the envisaged state that we need to arrive at. And we need a very clear economic policy from a South African perspective that is going to solve a whole host of issues that we up until now have approached from a very piecemeal perspective. I mean, we've had the New Growth Path, we have the NDP, these other policies that are emerging, New Dawn and all those things, and they've got economic repercussions. South Africa doesn't have a very clear policy position from an economic perspective. And because of that confusion, we then find ourselves with a very haphazard policy environment that doesn't support participation of young people in almost any sector. And if I were to suggest what is within our control is, I mean, look, we're going to a policy conference soon. We should be able to actually have a very clear conversation about what is the economic policy direction of South Africa, and to what extent is it bringing young people into the mainstream economy so that they're able to participate in those different sectors and those different verticals that they currently don't participate. Around the investment of in innovation, I mean, it's true that if you look at IPEP, for instance, South Africa spends less than 10% investment, less than 10% of the GDP in investment into innovation. Now, that doesn't position us to ever be competitive globally. If you look at the top tier in the global community in the knowledge-based economy, the bulk of the countries that are making inroads in IP, inroads in new technologies, inroads in new innovations are investing more than 10% of their GDP into innovation. And if we don't make that investment, we are subjecting South Africa to continuously become a consumer of solutions and innovations that are coming from other countries, let alone just our own ability to participate domestically. The innovation spectrum is actually a global conversation. And so when we think about technology, when we think about intellectual property, when we think about innovation within a South African context, we need to think about it as competing with the rest of the world. And the investments we make domestically puts us at a particular situation of being able to compete globally. And currently 0.6% of our GDP goes into innovation. That is not adequate to be able to compete. We will not be able to compete with the Chinas of this world. We will not be able to compete with the Nordic countries that are sitting at 20% of their GDP going into innovation, focused on intellectual property, focused on new products and new services coming out and putting those services in the global context. And that conversation has to be obviously driven by young people. We have to drive that chat and make sure that there's a greater contribution. There's a greater contribution of the GDP into innovation, but also there's a localization of innovation. I mean, for the fact that during this period, we are still sourcing something as simple as masks from China and India, that doesn't make sense. It is not that complex to make a face mask. And we're spending billions of rands, sending them to other countries to deal with something we could make in our backyard. There's a localization that we haven't collided into in a very broad areas within our sectors where we should really be looking to localize a whole host of resources, a whole host of services, and a whole host of products. Thanks, Comrade Lois.
Thank you so much, Comrade B. This is a comment, and I think the comment is a request that is being made, particularly to, as there will be our January 8th message. The point here is that Nelson Mabusela is making is that there needs to be clarity and clear communication against the looming conspiracy submissions that are there. And the organization needs to guide society and be clear because people are speaking about a lot of conspiracies, and Nelson is saying we need to provide some scientific clarity on this, and the organization needs to speak and government must guide so that people are not misled, particularly those who are illiterate. And then earlier on, including, I think there were two speakers that spoke about policies and what the kind of young people are supposed to be occupying the important spaces. And if, I don't know if Comrade Pemi is still here, the point that was made about implementation and the kind of legislatures we have, the kind of perhaps young councillors. When President Mokaba passed on, he was an MP and he had been at DM before. And so perhaps what are the kind of MPs, the kind of MPLs we need in this current dispensation? And you know, and I think it comes out strongly also in the fifth pillar that Comrade Bandile speaks about in his presentation, because we can have the best policies, but we need implementation, execution at the end. I want to, we are way over time. We're supposed to have finished at 8, but I think it was worth the engagements. We're way over time with an hour and 10 minutes. Comrade Nombuso made a plea to us when she asked us to respect and be patient with health workers. But I think as young people, Comrade Convener and Comrade Coordinator and members of the NYTT, I think it's important that we also send a message that, you know, we need to call each other out. It can't be that young people are the ones who host house parties. Young people are the ones who are contributing to the high number with in this particular pandemic. So we need to call our friends out. You need to call your comrade out because then you are assisting in the fight against COVID. Then you are assisting to alleviate the pressure from the likes of Comrade Nombuso, who was speaking here. And I think in closing, one of the points that came out from Comrade TG was that young people must rise. We have an obligation to take the baton and build this radical militant ANC Youth League that will champion these socioeconomic struggles as per today's theme that we were speaking about. And I would like to acknowledge all the former leaders who are here. I saw we were joined by, earlier on, Comrade Thandi did acknowledge the comrades who were with us earlier. I would like to also acknowledge, I saw that Comrade Rabu Mulekane also joined. I also saw the former SG, Comrade Vuiswa, also joined while we were in session. I also saw that we are joined by provincial secretaries. I saw a provincial secretary from Gauteng, Comrade Jacob. I also saw that we were joined by Abo Comrade Tinas Babizake, Osis Nomi, Nkondlo. If I have missed anyone, I do apologize. I was checking as people are joining and I could see some have left. We were also joined by our young people in various regions. We were also joined by the president of the ANC Women's League, Uma Mubata. We were joined by various members from Eastern Cape. We saw you, comrades. We thank you very much for joining us, and we appreciate the participation. And I think from here onwards, Comrade Thandi, as she said earlier, in concurring with the TG on the plans for the Congress that has to sit, I know we will communicate soon on the launch of the discussion documents that will take place, because that work is well ahead in terms of ensuring that we have the draft discussion documents. And I think most importantly, comrades, it's really up to us as the younger generation to learn from those who came before us and ensure that we carry on and we take the message forward, and we continue with the spirit of President Peter Mokaba. Long live the spirit of President Peter Mokaba. Long live. Long live the spirit of Comrade Peter Mokaba. Long live.
Long live.
Long live.
Long live. Long live.
Long live. Long live. Long live.
Paul Mashatile as well.
Long live.
Long live.
Long live.
Long live the
Youth League
youth
ivuka ibambe.
Long live.
Nathi, the elders, long live.
Long live, Mokaba.
Long live.